3 months ago, I was sitting in my corner office on the 47th floor of a Manhattan high-rise, reviewing resumes for my new executive assistant position. The salary was 6 figures, the benefits package was incredible, and I had my pick of dozens of qualified candidates from Columbia, NYU, and Harvard business schools. Then I saw a name that made my blood run cold. Marcus Chen. Marcus Chen. The same Marcus Chen who made my sophomore year at Roosevelt High School in Queens a living hell. The Marcus who convinced half the varsity football team that I was gay because I preferred reading Stephen King novels during lunch instead of talking about which cheerleader had the best legs. The Marcus who started calling me Bookworm Billy, and somehow made it stick so well that even teachers accidentally used it. The Marcus who orchestrated the most humiliating moment of my teenage life during the spring formal of 2009. I stared at his headshot attached to the resume. 15 years had been kind to him, still handsome, still that confident smile, but there were worry lines around his eyes that hadn't been there in high school. His credentials were impressive: MBA from Fordham, 5 years at a boutique consulting firm that had recently downsized, glowing recommendations. On paper, he was exactly what I needed. But here's what Marcus didn't know when he submitted that application. William Park, the scrawny Korean-American kid he used to torment, had become Bill Park, founder and CEO of a tech startup worth $42 million. The boy who used to eat lunch alone in the library bathroom was now the one with the power to hire and fire. I had 2 choices: delete his application and pretend I never saw it, or do something that would either be the most satisfying moment of my career or the biggest mistake I'd ever make. I scheduled the interview for the following Tuesday. What happened in that conference room 15 years after high school graduation would change both of our lives forever, but not in the way either of us expected. To understand why Marcus Chen's cruelty hit me so hard, you need to know about my father, Dr. James Park. He immigrated to Queens from Seoul in 1978 with nothing but a medical degree that wasn't recognized in the United States and an unshakable belief that his children would achieve the American dream he'd been denied. Dad worked double shifts at a packaging plant in Long Island City while studying for his medical boards at night, sleeping 3 hours if he was lucky. By the time I was born in 1991, he'd finally become a licensed physician, but the struggle had hardened him. Success wasn't just expected in our household, it was demanded. My older sister Jennifer was already the family golden child, valedictorian at Stuyvesant High School and pre-med at Cornell. The pressure to match her achievements was suffocating. In Korea, we have saying, Dad would tell me every time my report card came home with anything less than straight A's. The nail that sticks up gets hammered down. But in America, the nail that doesn't stick up gets buried. He'd pause, fixing me with that intense stare that made me feel like I was disappointing 3 generations of ancestors. Which nail are you going to be, William? The irony was that I was actually a good student, honor roll, National Honor Society, accepted to several decent colleges. But good wasn't enough. Not when Jennifer existed. Not when every Korean family gathering turned into a competitive showcase where parents bragged about their children's accomplishments like they were trading baseball cards. I remember one particular incident when I was 14. We were at my uncle's house in Flushing for my cousin Danny's graduation party. Danny had gotten into MIT, and my aunt was practically glowing as she served Korean barbecue and told anyone who would listen about his full scholarship. Dad sat there nodding politely, but I could see the tension in his jaw. William is doing very well too, he finally said during a lull in the conversation. Top 15% of his class, and he's only a freshman. My uncle smiled that patronizing smile I'd learned to hate. Top 15%? That's good. Danny was valedictorian all 4 years. The drive home was silent except for the sound of Dad's knuckles cracking as he gripped the steering wheel. When we got to our apartment, he finally spoke. You embarrassed me today. I didn't do anything wrong, I protested. Exactly. You didn't do anything wrong. You also didn't do anything exceptional. In this family, wrong and mediocre are the same thing. That night, I heard my parents arguing in Korean through the thin walls. I caught enough words to understand that Mom was defending me, saying I was still young, that there was time. Dad's response was sharp. There's no time. Look around us. Look at this neighborhood. We didn't come to America so our son could be ordinary. He wasn't entirely wrong. We lived in a cramped 2-bedroom apartment above a Korean grocery store on Northern Boulevard. My parents slept on a pull-out couch so Jennifer and I could have our own rooms. Well, room and converted closet in my case. Every dollar was stretched, every expense calculated. Dad drove a 15-year-old Honda Civic with a broken air conditioner because car payments were money thrown away that could have gone toward our college funds instead. The pressure intensified when I started high school. Dad began introducing me at Korean church as my son who will be a doctor. Not wants to be or is studying to be, will be. As if my future was already decided, already guaranteed, and any deviation from that path would be a betrayal of everything he'd sacrificed. But here's what Dad didn't understand. While he was planning my future in medicine, I was discovering something else entirely in Mr. Rodriguez's computer programming class. I stayed after school every day learning HTML, then JavaScript, then Python. I built my first website when I was 16, a simple platform where students could anonymously report bullying. It was crude, probably full of security holes, but it worked. More importantly, it felt like mine in a way that organic chemistry never did. Comment below and let me know where you're watching this from. I love connecting with viewers from around the world. And I'm curious if family pressure around academic achievement is universal or if this hits differently depending on your culture. The secret I was keeping from my family wasn't about girls or drugs or any of the typical teenage rebellions. My secret was that I'd already decided I didn't want to be a doctor. I wanted to build things, create solutions, maybe even start my own company someday. But in the Park household, that wasn't a dream, it was a betrayal. And Marcus Chen was about to make keeping that secret infinitely more complicated. The spring formal of 2009 was supposed to be my redemption. For 3.5 years, I'd been the invisible kid, not quite nerdy enough for the computer club crowd, not athletic enough for sports, not cool enough for anything else. But I'd finally worked up the courage to ask Sarah Martinez to the dance, and somehow, miraculously, she'd said yes. Sarah was different from most of the popular kids at Roosevelt. She was in my AP literature class, actually read the assigned books, and sometimes lingered after class to discuss whether Holden Caulfield was a reliable narrator. She had dark hair that always smelled like vanilla and a laugh that made me forget about my father's disappointment for just a few minutes. The formal was being held at the Astoria Manor, one of those old-school Queen's banquet halls with crystal chandeliers and burgundy carpeting that had seen better decades. My parents had reluctantly agreed to let me rent a tuxedo from Men's Warehouse after I promised to maintain my GPA through senior year. Dad drove me there in the Honda, lecturing me about responsibility the entire way. "Remember, this is not just fun and games," he said as we pulled into the parking lot. "These relationships you make now, they matter for networking later. That girl's father, he works at Mount Sinai Hospital, yes? Good connection for medical school applications." I wanted to tell him that I liked Sarah for her mind, not her father's job, but arguing would have meant missing the dance entirely. Instead, "I understand." "And William?" He grabbed my arm before I could get out of the car. "Don't do anything to embarrass our family name." The pressure of that statement sat heavy on my shoulders as I walked into the manor. The decorating committee had done their best with a limited budget, twisted streamers in the school colors, a few strategically placed spotlights, and a DJ who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. But seeing Sarah in her navy blue dress, talking and laughing with her friends near the punch bowl, made the cheesy decorations irrelevant. Marcus Chen was there, of course. He'd been dating Brittany Williams, the head cheerleader, since junior year, and they were holding court near the dance floor like some kind of high school royalty. Marcus had that effortless popularity that seemed to come naturally to certain people, star wide receiver on the football team, honor student without seeming to try, the kind of guy who could make teachers laugh and still maintain respect from his peers. The first few hours of the dance went better than I'd dared to hope. Sarah and I actually danced, awkwardly, but we danced. We talked about our summer plans, about college applications, about everything except the crushing weight of parental expectations. For a few precious hours, I felt normal. Maybe even happy. Then Marcus decided to remind me exactly where I stood in the Roosevelt High School ecosystem. It started small. He'd bump into me while I was getting punched for Sarah, just hard enough to make me spill some on my rented shirt. "Sorry, bookworm Billy," he'd say with that smile that never reached his eyes. "Didn't see you there." Later, while Sarah was in the bathroom, he approached me directly. "Having fun at your first dance?" he asked, loud enough for nearby couples to hear. "It's not my first dance," I replied, though technically it was. Right. "I forgot about the freshman mixer. Though I heard you spent that one hiding in the library." A few people laughed. Marcus fed off audiences like a comedian working a crowd. "Tell me, Billy, does Sarah know about your little hobby?" My blood went cold. "What hobby?" "Oh, come on. Everyone knows you spend lunch periods in the computer lab working on your little, what do you call them? Websites." The way he said it made it sound like the most pathetic thing in the world. "What is it this time? A blog about comic books? A forum for kids who can't make friends?" I should have walked away. Should have found Sarah and suggested we leave early. Instead, I made the mistake of trying to defend myself. "It's not a hobby. It's called programming, and it's actually really complex." "Oh, programming." Marcus interrupted, his voice getting louder. "Hear that, everyone? Billy here is going to be the next Bill Gates." The laughter was spreading now, and I could feel my face burning with embarrassment. But Marcus wasn't done. He never was. "You know what I love about you, Billy? You actually think this computer stuff is going to matter in the real world. Like, you genuinely believe that sitting alone in a room typing code is going to make you successful." He leaned in closer, lowering his voice so only I could hear the next part. "But here's the thing, guys like you? You'll always be working for guys like me. That's just how the world works." If you're enjoying this story so far, please hit that subscribe button and give this video a like. We're trying to reach 1,000 subscribers, and every bit of support helps us create more content like this. That's when Sarah returned from the bathroom and saw the crowd gathered around us. That's when Marcus, emboldened by his audience and my obvious humiliation, decided to go for the kill shot. And that's when my carefully constructed high school existence came crashing down in the most public, devastating way possible. What happened next would haunt me for the next 15 years, right up until the moment Marcus Chen walked into my conference room for a job interview. "What's going on here?" Sarah asked, looking between Marcus and me with genuine concern. The crowd around us had grown larger, sensing drama the way teenagers always do. Marcus's eyes lit up with opportunity. "Oh, we were just talking about Billy's future career plans. Weren't we, Billy?" I should have said nothing. Should have taken Sarah's hand and walked away. But 15 years of my father's voice echoing in my head, "Which nail are you going to be, William?" made me stand my ground. Actually, we were talking about programming. About building things that matter, creating solutions for real problems. My voice was shakier than I wanted it to be, but I pressed on. "Maybe you should try it sometime, Marcus. You might learn something." The crowd went quiet. In the Roosevelt High School social hierarchy, nobody talked back to Marcus Chen. Not even the other popular kids. Marcus's smile turned predatory. "Solutions for real problems? Like what, Billy? What problems are you solving exactly?" He turned to address the growing audience. "See, Billy here thinks he's going to change the world with his computer. Show them, Billy. Show everyone what you've been working on." "I don't have to show you anything," I said, but my confidence was cracking. "Come on, don't be modest. You're so proud of your little project. Sarah, did you know your date has been building a website?" Marcus pulled out his phone. This was back when smartphones were still relatively new, and having an iPhone was a status symbol. What was it called again? Right. Roosevelt Reports. It's a platform where students can anonymously report bullying. The crowd murmured with interest, but Marcus wasn't done. His voice got louder, more theatrical. "Now, I think it's adorable that Billy wants to stop bullying. Really heartwarming. But here's what's funny, the only person who ever used his website was Billy himself." My stomach dropped. He couldn't possibly know that. That's right, everyone. Billy has been anonymously reporting bullying incidents about himself. To himself. Using fake names. Marcus was in full performance mode now, feeding off the crowd's growing laughter. Apparently, he invented an entire persona called Concerned Student, who has filed 17 different reports about people being mean to poor little Billy Park. The laughter was getting louder. I could see phones coming out, people starting to record. This was 2009, when social media humiliation was just beginning to reach its full potential. "Marcus, stop," Sarah said quietly, but he was beyond hearing reason. "But wait, it gets better." He was practically shouting now. Billy also created fake reports about other students to make it look like the bullying was widespread. Made up entire scenarios, complete with detailed descriptions. One report claims that someone put a dead fish in Jennifer Martinez's locker, you know, Tony's little sister? Except Jennifer Martinez doesn't exist. Billy made her up. The room was spinning. Every single humiliating detail of my desperate attempt to create evidence of school-wide bullying was being exposed in front of half my graduating class. But the worst part was the look on Sarah's face, not anger, but pity. The kind of pity that cuts deeper than any insult. "You want to know the truth about Billy Park?" Marcus continued, riding high on the crowd's attention. "He's so pathetic that he had to invent fake people to feel sorry for him. He's so desperate for attention that he created an entire alternate reality where he's the victim of some grand conspiracy instead of just accepting that he's a lonely, weird kid who doesn't fit in anywhere." That's when something inside me snapped. Not the righteous anger you see in movies, but something colder. Something calculating. "You're right," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. The crowd quieted, surprised by my sudden calmness. I did create fake reports. I did make up scenarios. You want to know why? Marcus's confident smirk faltered slightly. Because I was documenting everything. Every insult, every humiliation, every cruel thing you and your friends have done over the past 4 years. But I needed patterns, examples, a comprehensive database of behavior. I pulled out my own phone, which was nowhere near as fancy as Marcus's but got the job done. Did you know that the New York State Education Department takes digital evidence of systematic bullying very seriously? Especially when it involves student athletes who receive state funding. The color drained from Marcus's face. "I've been building a case, Marcus. Not just against you, but against the entire culture of this school. Dates, times, witnesses, screenshots of social media posts. 3 years worth of documentation about how you've created a hostile environment for dozens of students." I looked around the now silent crowd, including video evidence from tonight. This was a complete bluff. My website was exactly what Marcus had described, a desperate attempt to feel less alone. But 15 years of watching my father navigate bureaucracy had taught me that confidence sells better than truth. "You're lying," Marcus said, but his voice had lost its swagger. "Am I? Want to test that theory?" I pocketed my phone and looked directly at him. "See, the difference between you and me is that I actually think about consequences. You just act." I took Sarah's hand, she was staring at me like she'd never seen me before, and started walking toward the exit. "Enjoy the rest of your dance, Marcus. I have emails to send." The crowd parted as we left, and I could hear the whispers starting behind us. The silence in Dad's Honda on the ride home was deafening. Sarah had asked her friend's older brother to drive her home instead of riding with us, and I couldn't blame her. The look on her face when we left the dance wasn't admiration for my clever bluff, it was confusion, maybe even fear. I'd revealed a side of myself that night that surprised even me. "What happened in there?" Dad asked as we sat at a red light on Northern Boulevard. "You look like you saw a ghost." "Nothing," I mumbled, staring out the window at the late-night Korean restaurants and 24-hour laundromats that lined our neighborhood. "Just high school drama." But it wasn't nothing. Over the next few days, word of my confrontation with Marcus spread through Roosevelt like wildfire, but not in the way I'd hoped. Instead of being seen as someone who'd finally stood up to his bully, I became the weird kid who'd threatened to destroy someone's future over a few jokes. The fake website reports Marcus had exposed made me look desperate and dishonest. My bluff about having real evidence fell apart when people started asking to see it. The worst part was Sarah. She avoided me in AP Literature, switched lab partners in chemistry, and when I finally cornered her after school to explain, her response cut deeper than anything Marcus had ever said. "Billy, I don't care about the website or the reports or any of that," she said, books clutched against her chest like armor. "What bothers me is that you've been lying. To everyone but mostly to yourself. You're not some master strategist building a case against bullying. You're just her. And instead of dealing with that, you created this elaborate fantasy." She was right and we both knew it. The confrontation had one positive consequence, though. Marcus actually did back off. Whether he believed my bluff about having evidence or just didn't want to risk escalating things further, he stopped the public humiliation campaign. We coexisted in that careful way that former enemies do, acknowledging each other's presence without interaction. I threw myself into programming with renewed intensity. If I couldn't be popular, if I couldn't get the girl, if I couldn't live up to my father's expectations, at least I could build something real. I spent the rest of senior year creating a legitimate tutoring platform that connected Roosevelt students with peer mentors. It was crude, but it worked. More importantly, it was honest. College at SUNY Purchase was a revelation. Away from the suffocating hierarchy of high school, I discovered that there were entire communities of people who thought building things was cool. I joined the computer science club, got an internship at a small startup in Manhattan, and gradually learned that Marcus had been wrong about one fundamental thing. Guys like me don't always end up working for guys like him. But the real transformation happened during my junior year. I was working on a project for my software engineering class when my professor, Dr. Rachel Kim, pulled me aside. "William, this authentication system you built, it's graduate-level work. Have you considered entering the university's startup competition?" I laughed. "Professor Kim, I'm a computer science major from Queens. I don't know anything about business." "That's exactly why you should enter," she said. "The best tech entrepreneurs aren't MBAs who learn to code. They're programmers who learn to think like entrepreneurs." That conversation changed everything. I entered the competition with a platform I called StudyBridge, a comprehensive academic collaboration tool that combined file sharing, project management, and peer tutoring. It wasn't revolutionary, but it solved real problems that students actually had. I didn't win the competition, but I placed third and caught the attention of a venture capital firm looking to invest in education technology. They offered me $50,000 in seed funding and a spot in their accelerator program in Manhattan. That's when I had to tell my parents. The conversation happened on a Sunday evening in our tiny kitchen, the same kitchen where I'd heard them arguing about my mediocrity years earlier. Dad was reading a Korean newspaper while Mom prepared banchan for the week ahead. "I'm not going to medical school," I said without preamble. Dad looked up from his paper. "What do you mean?" "I mean I'm dropping out of pre-med. I'm starting a company instead." I handed him the term sheet from the VC firm. "They're investing in my platform." He read it in silence, his face unreadable. Mom stopped chopping vegetables. $50,000? He said finally. "To start. If the company performs well, there could be more rounds of funding. Potentially millions." Dad set down the paper and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, not disappointment or anger, but something closer to confusion. "You did this without telling us?" "I had to. You would have tried to stop me." "Of course I would have stopped you." His voice rose, then caught himself. "In our house, we didn't yell. We disappointed quietly. William, this is your future. Medicine is stable, respectable. You can help people, make good living, have security. Dad, I can help people with technology too. Maybe even more people than I could as a doctor." Mom finally spoke up. "What if it fails?" It was a fair question. Then I'll have learned something valuable and I can always go back to school later. "You don't understand," Dad said, and suddenly he looked older than his 53 years. "In Korea, I was somebody. I was dear. Here, I had to start over, prove myself again. I wanted to give you something that couldn't be taken away, a profession that would always be respected, always be needed." That's when I understood. His pressure hadn't been about me at all. It had been about him, about the dreams he'd deferred, about the security he'd never felt since leaving everything behind to come to America. I know, Dad, and I appreciate everything you sacrificed. But this is my chance to build something from the ground up, the way you did when you came here. The silence stretched between us for a long moment. Finally, Mom reached over and squeezed my hand. If this is what you really want, she said quietly, then we support you. Dad took longer to come around, but eventually he nodded. 1 year, he said. If this company doesn't work after 1 year, you go back to school. Deal. StudyBridge never became the next Facebook, but it was successful enough. We had steady user growth, secured 2 more rounds of funding, and after 3 years, I sold it to Pearson Education for $8 million. Not enough to retire, but enough to prove that I could build something valuable. More importantly, it taught me everything I needed to know about running a business, managing teams, and identifying market opportunities. By the time I was 28, I'd founded my second company, a cybersecurity firm focused on protecting educational institutions from data breaches. That's the company that made me rich. Really rich. $42 million rich when we went public in 2019. And that's how the scared Korean kid from Queens ended up sitting in a Manhattan office, reading a job application from his former tormentor, with the power to change both of their lives forever. The universe, it seemed, had a sense of irony. The interview was scheduled for 2 p.m. on a Tuesday. I spent the morning staring out my office window at the Manhattan skyline, thinking about choices and consequences, about the person I'd been and the person I'd become. By the time my assistant buzzed to announce Marcus's arrival, I'd made my decision. He walked into that conference room looking exactly like what he was, a successful man who'd hit a rough patch. The confidence was still there, but tempered now with genuine humility. When he saw me behind the desk, his face went through a rapid series of emotions: surprise, recognition, embarrassment, and finally, resignation. "Billy Park," he said quietly. "It's Bill now. Please sit down." For the next hour, we had the most honest conversation we'd ever shared. Marcus apologized, not the performative kind of apology you give when you're caught, but the real kind that comes from years of reflection and growth. He talked about his own family pressures, about the toxic masculinity that had driven his teenage cruelty, about the therapy he'd started after his divorce. "I know this is awkward," he said near the end, "and I know you probably hate me. But I need you to know that not a day goes by that I don't regret how I treated you in high school. You didn't deserve any of it." I believed him. More importantly, I realized that the scared, angry teenager inside me finally believed him too. Here's what I learned from that day: revenge fantasies are just that, fantasies. The real power isn't in crushing your enemies. It's in choosing mercy when you don't have to. It's in recognizing that people can change, that hurt people, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is let go of old grudges. I offered Marcus the job. Not because I felt sorry for him, but because he was genuinely qualified and because I wanted to see who we could become when we weren't trapped in our high school roles. He's been working for me for 3 months now, and he's excellent at his job. We're not friends exactly, but we're something better, 2 adults who've learned to see each other as complete human beings rather than the caricatures we were at 17. My father was right about one thing. In America, you get to choose which nail you want to be. I chose to be the one that builds bridges instead of walls, that creates opportunities instead of seeking revenge, that measures success not in dollars earned but in grudges released. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Share your own stories of forgiveness and second chances in the comments below. I read every single one, and your experiences help build a community of people committed to growth and healing. Sometimes the best revenge is becoming someone who no longer needs it.